Hello physical fiends! So I finally managed to get my hands on the Nintendo Switch 2 and I've been playing it for a good few days now, and one of the best things about it so far is the fact that many Switch 1 games perform better while being played on the Switch 2. And I'm not talking about those games with free updates or paid updates. I'm talking about just pure raw power smoothing out some issues that people had with Switch 1 performances. I've tried a few games, and this is nothing scientific because, when people show all those numbers and wavy lines, it puts me to sleep in the veterinarian kind of way. So this is just a quick look, some quick impressions about some Switch 1 games that are better than ever before. All the games included have physical releases, of course, and it is a heads up that maybe you want to delve into your backlog or your collection and pull some of these games out to try for yourself. Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster. Now, this game has caused a little bit of controversy because it's one of those games that got a bespoke Nintendo Switch 2 release, but there was no upgrade path for those who already own the Switch 1 version. The Switch 1 release ran at 30 frames per second, which for me and this game is perfectly fine. In fact, I've grown to like it more, and this is coming from someone who owns this game on PlayStation 5, PC, and now Nintendo Switch 2. All of those run at 60 frames per second. For me, it's just a bit too animated, if you know what I mean. It doesn't feel cinematic. I know people will think I'm a lunatic, but sometimes 60 frames can make things look a bit plasticky and shiny. Anyways, the Switch 1 version, even with the 30 frames cap, did suffer from some issues in those few sections where there are a lot of effects going on. Like the first section of Suikoden 2 was a bit dodgy, not a great early impression. Those flames hurt the frames. But playing the Switch 1 version on the Nintendo Switch 2, those issues have gone. Sure, it's still running at 30 frames per second, but it is constant 30 frames. There is no droppage there. And so, weirdly, the Switch 1 version on my Switch 2 is gonna be my favorite way to play this game, I think. Don't judge me, okay? Atelier Yumia was always a bit rough on the Switch. I did advise playing the PlayStation 5 version instead if you cared about inconsistent frame rates, poor performance, and not particularly pleasing visuals. It was especially jarring when you consider the other games in the series on the Switch looked really nice, at least the ones I played. I'm sure there was a patch to help things out post-launch, and it did seem better than I remember playing it today, but it was still struggling to get to that 30 frames per second target on Nintendo Switch 1. However, on Nintendo Switch 2, the frame rate is hitting those 30 frames per second all of the time, as far as I can see. I didn't get anywhere especially busy where frames could be dropped, but it was still very pleasing compared to the Switch 1, which was getting between like 25, 28 frames just from natural exploration. And it feels so much better playing on Nintendo Switch 2. Visually, it's pretty much the same as far as I can see, but it has raised the game up from being, definitely PS5 preferred to, the Switch version is a decent option if you play on Switch 2. And I think if Koei released a patch to unlock the frame rate, it might even boost it up to 60. The load times are also much better. Like the initial boot up from the home screen on Switch 1 was a painful 1 minute 10 seconds, whereas on Switch 2, a reasonable 20 seconds. Fast travel is almost instantaneous as well. Now I can actually not be slightly embarrassed to recommend the Switch version of Atelier Yumia. And, by the way, if you want to purchase it or any of the games featured in this video, if they are still available at retailers, I have linked them down below in the description and pinned comment. And any purchase made via my links helps support me in the best way possible, so I do thank you ever so much. What else did I try? Disaster Report 4 is a game that is so unique, yet the Switch version, let's just say it was not great. There were so many technical issues that it made it feel like it was held together by tape and prayers. Poor visuals, extremely dodgy performance. It did its best to try and put me off a weird yet compelling gameplay experience. Playing the Switch 1 version on Switch 2, the visuals are still a little bit fuzzy, and everyone is still wearing a wig for some reason. However, the performance is on another planet. It's not perfect, but it is mostly 60 frames per second. There is a dropped frame here and there, but 60 frames per second is an incredible difference. Not bad for a game that was often in the low 20s. The load times are much improved as well. This is breathing a new life into a game that was pretty much laughed at. Its weird gameplay and technical incompetence now is just a quirky Japanese release, and that's what makes it awesome. And I want everyone to give it a try. Honestly, it's fantastic news, and I did plan on playing through the entire series one day, and so I'm much happier I'll be able to do it nicely on my Switch too. RiME was a huge disappointment for me early on in the Switch's life. It is a game that looked beautiful, it seemed inventive, mysterious, and I'd heard nothing but great things about it. So I got it on the Switch, and it ran like an absolute dog. Now, slightly dodgy frame rates don't bother me that much, but this was something extra bad. It was chugging more than it wasn't, just constant chuggage. It still does to this day on the Switch 1. But you pop that cartridge into your Nintendo Switch 2, it is solid. It's a solid 30 frames per second, at least for the most part. Maybe, when loading a new area, But that's pretty much made me gun from feeling like I'd wasted a lot of money on this game at launch to, wow, I can't wait to actually finally play it. It's great stuff, and I'm super happy it's basically fixed the game. Yonder, the Cloud Catcher Chronicles. Cute, lovely game that at launch the performance kind of put me off, especially just the random stutters. I believe the game got a major patch at one point to basically redo the coding or something like that. And on Switch 1, I believe it has an unlocked frame rate ranging from 30 to 60 frames per second. It's alright, a little stutter here and there, but the fluctuation, it's a bit weird. But on the Nintendo Switch 2, it seems to be an almost perfect 60 frames, which is great news. I mean, sure, I would definitely still be fine with the Switch 1 version, no problem. It's much better than the original launch, but to have it perfect is an extra step of awesomeness. The game originally came out a long time ago, early in the Switch's life, so now I think it will be almost a new game to many people who now own a Switch or Switch 2. Saints Row the Third. Playing on Switch 1, it runs much better than I remember when I reviewed it for Switch Watch all those years ago. Again, there could have been a post-launch patch, but today it ran at a solid 30 frames per second on Switch 1. And moving on to Switch 2, I didn't notice a difference when I was playing it. In fact, I was about to just delete it from my list, but actually, manually counting the frames, we've got a 60. Yeah, it's a super solid 60 frames per second. Okay, I literally didn't see the difference until checking it, but it's still super nice, and seeing them side by side, it is a bit more obvious. And of course, if you want like a proper physical GTA kind of game, this is definitely the winner on the Switch. It's been out a long time, but now it's all shiny on the Switch too. Soldiers. I'd heard a lot of complaints about this game on the Switch. I own it, so I have it in my collection thanks to my man in Japan, VIII. He sent it to me, thanks. But I'd not had the chance to give it a play until now. Playing it on the Switch 1, I found the game to be okay, not as bad as I expected from what I heard, running at 60 frames, but it did suffer from some disappointing stutters when fighting, just once in a while to put you out of your stride. I mean, I could play it, and maybe it gets worse as the game goes on. It's entirely possible when, they try to ramp up the epicness in a game. I just played the first section to sample it, but playing it on Switch 2, well, okay, it didn't fix those stutters completely, but mostly. For some reason, the Switch 1, it'd be almost every time an enemy noticed you, whereas on the Switch 2, less so. Only occasionally did it have a little bit of a stutter. Again, things could get strenuous later in the game, but I would definitely choose to play it on the Switch 2 just to be sure, just to get that smoother combat. Now, I'm also going to go quickly over some other games I tried, but I didn't notice a huge difference. But before I do, if you are new here and you love physical media, you love physical video games, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. It will be the best thing you do today. You'll be doing it for yourself, you'll be helping me out, and you'll also be helping the industry, because the bigger this channel is, the more publishers will pay attention to the demand for physical media. NIS America just announced a game key release as their first one on Switch 2, and this will not stand, okay? We need people to subscribe here so that they notice, oh, okay, people do actually like proper physical games. So do the industry a favor, subscribe, get this channel as high as it can go, okay? Alright, a couple of games I tried but didn't notice a big difference. Ys 8. I always felt the Switch version was a bit ugly, even compared to the Vita version. Again, this game was probably patched since launch after I originally played it. And playing it on Switch 1 today, it wasn't as fuzzy or as ugly as I remember. No wonder people have been thinking I'm an idiot. Of course, maybe there are different biomes I should check out, because that can affect the visual things going on. But the early grasslands part actually looked better than I remember. And playing on Switch 2, I didn't notice any difference at all, aside from, once again, having much shorter load times. The visuals, just the same, the frame rate, still 30. Baldo. This is a game that's had more patches than a Boy Scout. I know the game was rough at launch, but briefly playing it on the Switch 1 fully patched up, it seemed fine, aside from the painful load times, which are now halved. Aside from that, performance seems to be 30 frames from what I sampled. Pretty solid on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. Now, I always heard people complain about the Switch version of this, but again, there could have been a post-launch patch compared to what I, critics, and other people remember. Or maybe it was the level I sampled for this video. Maybe that wasn't the best example, but I was surprised on Switch 1, it was running at 60 frames per second, so there wasn't much point in checking it out on Switch 2. Maybe I should check the other games in the trilogy or different levels, but the games are quite difficult, especially when you're just trying to quickly take a look at it. So I'll have to check another day once I've mentally prepared myself. Either way, it doesn't matter. Just import the physical version, okay? It's one of the best imports that money can buy. And yeah, these are some games I checked out comparing the performances between Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2. Did you enjoy this video? Was it useful? Any games that have a physical release that you'd like me to check out? Preferably ones with unfortunate Switch 1 performances, and maybe that I already have in my collection. That would help. I'm not made of money. Speaking of money, if you want to buy video games, maybe some of the ones I've talked about, please use the links down below in the description and pinned comment. It is the best way to support me and this channel. And yeah, check out some other videos I've made. They may be useful to you as well. And also, by the way, don't forget, have a fantastic weekend. Take care.